Good day. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are at. I wish I was there in person to be with you today, but I am delighted to be presenting my brain and my story today with you all. My name is Jackie Stebbins. I am coming to you from my home office in Bismarck, North Dakota, in the United States. Whereas I know you'll get to celebrate with a glass of wine after this. I haven't even had my second cup of coffee where I'm at. So I am a seronegative autoimmune encephalitis survivor, and that's why I am here to share with you my story and also my brain. And I can tell you that that picture on the left is actually my brain taken from MRI imaging. And a friend of mine named Robert Shear actually created that art, and he is also an autoimmune encephalitis survivor. So before I really get started, I want to give a huge thank you to the Encephalitis Society for allowing me to share my story today and be with all of you good folks. And I just want to give such a special thanks to Dr. Ava Easton, the CEO of the Encephalitis Society, and the whole team at the Encephalitis Society. You all do such important and great work across the world for people like me and my family, and I just can't thank you all enough. So with that, here we go. Here is my story. Leading up to 2017, I was a very happy person and really was just thriving in life. It was my dream to be a lawyer, and I was living my dream. I was a practicing attorney at my own law firm called Stebbins Malloy. I have a husband named Sean, and at the time I had two small children. They were 5 and 3, and they were all in our happy home, and we thought we were growing together, and we had so many dreams and plans. I worked very hard though as a lawyer. I worked a lot of hours and just wanted to continue to grow my business and my career. I was very well respected. I was making more money than I ever could have dreamed. So life felt just wonderful and it was perfect. And I was in control of everything, right? No. So by the fall of 2017, about the time this photograph of me was taken, I started to realize that I was working way too hard. I felt chronically stressed out and exhausted. I felt like I could never catch my breath. And I was sick a lot, getting colds and things like that. And all of a sudden, in the fall of 2017, one morning, it was in November, I woke up at 4 a.m., almost like someone had set an alarm clock in my brain. It was super strange, but I moved on. But those 4 a.m. wake up calls in my mind kept continuing at 4 a.m. And it went from just strange to very irritating to actually very exhausting. Those wake up calls continued until about March of 2018. And at that time, it went from my sleep being interrupted to insomnia. I could not sleep. And anyone who has ever been affected by insomnia knows that the lack of sleep can take any good person and make them go bad in a rather short amount of time. So at this point, it had been months that I had had problems sleeping. And I really began to worry, like, I have to stop this, or I'm going to lose my job, and I'm going to lose my house, and I'm going to lose everything that matters to me. But little did I know, it was all very out of my control. By April of 2018, I was unwinding. I started to realize that I was clenching my jaw tightly, and my hands started to shake. I had tremors in both hands, and I felt this deafening white noise playing on loop in my ears. It was almost like I had become an empty shell of my former self. So, lawyers are actually known for high stress. It's a high stress, demanding job. And unfortunately, because of that, many lawyers struggle with mental health. Well, I was stubborn and didn't want to believe that mental health was affecting me. But when I finally started to let my guard down and talk to my mom and my husband and my law partner, we all agreed that I was burnt out. I was working too hard at work, hence the burnout. Burnout was leading to what I thought was anxiety and depression, and that was what was causing my insomnia. Seemed to make sense, right? It was work's fault. It was work to blame. But by May of 2018, I was in a terrifying free fall. My symptoms had intensified to the point of debilitating me. So on Tuesday, May 8th, I went to work, got there late, and I had a major panic attack in my office by myself. And I realized that I needed a week's break. So I was just going to take off work for a week. And as you can see in these two photos on the left, that was May 7th. I was with my daughter at an open house for her new school. And the picture on the right is me on Tuesday, May 8th, the day I left work. I still looked perfectly normal, but what was going on inside of my body was far from it. And honestly, after these two pictures were taken, my life was never again the same. Immediately upon me leaving work, I shut down, I stopped communicating, and I still couldn't sleep. Nights were the worst for me. They brought out really just terror. I would lie awake in bed and panic, and I would ask if I was dying. I saw gray waves of dead people floating above me. I started to wander in the house. I thought a man who had been in a case I was on came into my bedroom and shot me in the face. I later believed that he was lurking in my house, and I walked around with my husband all through the house, very creepily. It was terrifying for my husband, but I was following him around in the house because I believed that man was in our house to kill me and my family. So obviously, I was paranoid, I was hallucinating, and at that point, I thought I was having a complete mental breakdown, and I begged my family to commit me into the psychiatric ward. Unfortunately, the psychiatric ward was not the place to deliver me from the problem that I still felt was plaguing me the most, the insomnia. Once I was admitted into the psychiatric ward, I was confused and I was lost. And strangely enough, it probably wasn't hard to get around in that hospital. The floor was a big circle, but I was lost in the circular hallways. I was very weepy, crying. I was jittery. And unfortunately for me, I had become a prisoner in my mind and body, and I was unable to cry out for help really in any meaningful way. And at that point, I think I struggled to write. I think I struggled to read. And I have slight memories of looking at a clock and it was jumping around at me, but I was unable to tell anyone what was really affecting me. When I got home, I was actually worse. My husband didn't see a woman who had healed. He saw a woman who was struggling even more. I was exhibiting very bizarre behavior. I had folded my laundry, my clothes, and I was putting them in the bathroom sink and on the floor. I was still very confused. I had very little memory. And at that point, I had lost my physical abilities. I'd always been very athletic. I was a swimmer. I still walked a lot and biked. At that point, after I was released from the hospital, I struggled to dress myself, tie my own shoes, and I really couldn't walk without the aid of my husband, either holding my arm or holding up my hand to walk. So 6 days after I was released from the psychiatric ward, I went to a follow-up appointment with a nurse practitioner. Her name is Stephanie McDonald, and Stephanie saved my life that day because she did not see a mental health or behavioral problem. She saw a neurological problem. She saw a woman who, was a lawyer only 10 to 15 days prior to that. And this woman that she saw in me was so confused and irritable and had little cognitive function. It just didn't add up. Stephanie saw a neurological problem and expedited my referral to a neurologist. The next day, I began my 3-day workup with neurologist Dr. Ralph Dunnigan, and the two of them together were absolute lifesavers for me. And I will absolutely love them forever because of their quick thinking and advocacy on my behalf. So that first day, Dr. Dunnigan had me do a cognitive assessment, which I failed with flying colors. And you can see on the right, that is my infamous clock that I drew that first day as part of the cognitive assessment. That is a very terrible clock. And if you ever draw a clock like that, you will know that something is very, very wrong in your life. In my mom's words, when she saw that clock, she almost threw up. My family was terrified that I had a brain tumor. The next day, MRI imaging was taken of my brain. That is my brain. Gosh, what a lovely brain that is. That was the image they saw. And thank goodness I did not have a brain tumor, which did help my family sleep somewhat. But right away, Dr. Dunnigan looked at my mom and my husband, who were with me. Of course, I was still very clueless as to what was going on around me. And he said, "Have you ever heard of the book called Brain on Fire?" And they said, "Oh my gosh, why are we talking about a book? We need to talk about Jackie." And he said, "I think she has that rare brain illness that that woman had in Brain on Fire." So I began having seizures at that point. Sometime when I was seeing Dr. Dunnigan, I started to tell my family, "I think I'm having seizures at night. I think fireworks are going off in my brain." How I knew that, I don't know, but I did. On the third day of my workup, I had done the cognitive assessment, the MRI. The third day was the dreaded spinal tap. The only memory I have of being is of being in great pain all day. Um, Late that night, early the next morning, I had a grand mal seizure in bed. It was very violent. It broke and dislocated my right shoulder and broke my back in 3 places. I was unconscious. The fire department and ambulance came to my house and boarded me out, and I was hospitalized again. At that point, when I entered the hospital again, I was really at a critical juncture for my life. And I think without those two lifesavers of Stephanie and Dr. Dunnigan intervening when they did and taking care of me the way they did and recognizing the neurological condition, without them, I don't think I would be here today. I think I would have died. If not, I would have suffered very permanent brain damage. And I don't believe that I would be here with you all today. So I'm very, very lucky. And the next stroke of luck was they started treatment. In that picture on the left, you can see me getting, I believe, the second treatment. And I was given intravenous steroids at a very high dose for a week. And miraculously, my brain turned back on and I immediately woke up. My family saw me come back to life that first day. I don't have the memories of coming back really until the second day. Unfortunately, it was that second day when everybody around me was cheering and they were, "Oh, Jackie's back, just like we prayed for." But I realized that my life was destroyed. My brain had been attacked. My spirit and emotions were irreparably damaged. I was broken and fragile. And I knew there was no way that I was ever going to return to my job and my dream career. I was trying to learn about autoimmune encephalitis, this dreadful disease that had almost killed me. It had taken, a few months of my life and memory. I struggled to understand what was affecting me. It took, I think, months to understand that it was a disease of my brain called AE. And in June of 2018, I went to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester and I did receive an affirmative diagnosis that I was seronegative AE. So I'm a little bit of a rarity in a rarity. And I saw Dr. McEwen, who is just wonderful. He is my autoimmune neurologist at Mayo. And he told me I was going to make a full recovery. He couldn't tell me how long it was going to take or what it was going to take, but he really believed I would make a full recovery and that I would never relapse into AE again, which of course I held a lot of hope for. So I had to remain hopeful for my family, my children. I knew I had to go on, but I was terrified I would never recover and I would never be the Jackie that I always knew myself to be: loud, talkative, love to be the center of attention and tell jokes, and who had excelled at such a challenging position and job. And I never believed that was going to come back. But I had to believe, I had to find the teeniest bit of hope in a hopeless situation that I could recover. I did not have a support group. I knew no one that had autoimmune encephalitis outside of Susanna Cahalan, who had written Brain on Fire, but I didn't know her personally. I had no expectations, no knowledge of AE, no benchmarks. So really recovery felt like such a terrible, big black hole. And I was adding on other health conditions. And I truly wondered if I could survive and stay alive. So I set one goal for myself, one goal. I was going to stay alive no matter what life threw at me for 1 year. And if I could make it through that 1 year, I told myself I would live, I would return to me, and I was going to be a survivor of AE. I was going to be in remission, but I had to live for that 1 year. It was very hard. The photograph on the right shows me in December of 2018. The steroids were very hard on my body. I gained a ton of fluid weight. My face looked like it was going to pop. The lovely moon face. My long hair was cut short and it started to fall out. I was very unrecognizable. I was growing facial hair. So steroids were saving my brain, but they were absolutely attacking my body. The seizure medication was very hard on my mind. So it was tough. It was a very isolating, lonely, what I felt was a very ugly experience. But to survive my days and recover, I try to focus on what I call in my book the 5 pillars of things that I think are important in recovery from AE. I tried to take control of the little things I had control over, and the rest I kind of had to let go and pray for the best. I think the 5 pillars that were so key for me were to focus on my physical and medical conditions, focus on my mental health, uh, my career, social problems, and a lot of fear. And as I discuss in the book, these are not linear and you have to try to balance them as much as you can. Some days you're like this, some days you're like this. My physical and medical problems were great. You know, my brain, seizure activity, AE, all of these terrible things that had, come to a head in May. Because of the trauma I had felt, my mental health was greatly affected. The losses for me were profound. It was the loss of my career, my identity, my money, my place in life. So my mental health was suffering, probably also because of what AE had done to my brain, which led me to realize that I could never go back to my career, which also affected my mental health. And I felt like I had to heal in an isolated way. I wasn't comfortable to leave the house or in my spoken word. So I was more isolated, which contributed to my social problems, which contributed to mental health. And I was very fearful. I was honestly fearful that for that first year that I might just die, which was not helpful on my physical health or my mental health. So I really tried to focus on the things I could in each of those 5 pillars. And I think that's all any of us can do, know where we're at and in those places and do the best we can. And as that year went on and I got to the 1 year mark, I started to realize that what I considered the path to resilience was survival, recovery, and then rebuilding my life, that it really was a process and not one that's quick. I made it to the 1 year mark. I was alive. I was AE, symptom and seizure free. I was so proud of that. Steroids and Keppra worked for me. I never had another seizure from that grand mal. I never needed any additional treatment outside of the steroids for my AE. I have always felt very lucky and like I am almost a miracle of this illness. Very much through the support of, I just had a wonderful, vast support system. My husband, my parents, close friends, other family, and a wonderful team of medical professionals. If you've read Unwillable, you know, in my acknowledgments, I speak of my chosen family, which is actually an Elton John song. I self-promoted as Elton John's biggest fan. You'll note the lyrics, I'm still standing. So I really had an amazing team to get me to that 1 year mark. And just as I had made that 1 year mark, I was hardly a few months away from that. And my husband and I received the surprise of a lifetime. We were pregnant with our third child. And I was only a year and a few months away from AE. My list of high risks were very long. So the pregnancy was very high risk. It was scary. I can't lie. It was a challenging 40 weeks. We believe that we were kind of in another medical battle for me. But at the height of COVID in April of 2020, I brought into the world this most beautiful little girl, and her initials are AE, just like my illness. We thought a miracle baby needed a very special name. And I can say that she was the best ending to my book that I had never imagined. And I believe that she gave me hope, the hope that I could continue on for her and for my other children, and just the hope that I was going to lead the life that maybe I hadn't chosen, but that it was going to be a very good life. And I can tell you that I receive messages from women all over the world all the time. And they tell me they've heard that I had a baby post AE, and that's their hope as well. So I think she has given others hope, and she just is such a beautiful part of this story that I never would have expected. So again, as I made it to that 1 year mark and I had survived, I felt like I had done a lot to recover. Now I decided it was time to rebuild my life. So I decided to write a book. And I think at first I really just wanted to share my story, but then I decided maybe I could help others too. I don't know when I decided to read the book or write a book. I only know that I talked about it quite frequently when I woke up. I don't remember, nor does my family, but I knew Brain on Fire was out there, and I said, I'm going to write a book too. So the only book I ever read about encephalitis was Dr. Ava Easton's Life After Encephalitis. And it was there I realized the importance of telling your own story. And I realized that if I wrote my own story, I'd be responsible for writing my ending, and I would give my story shape. And that felt like me taking power over what was a situation that, had been very unwillable and remained entirely outside of my control, the onset of AE. So I wanted to take control over the situation, and I did. I started penning that memoir. I waited until that 1 year mark after my illness. I would not have been able to take on such a task mentally, physically, emotionally. But on May 27th of 2019, I started writing, and I wrote for about a year on that book. The story was there in a year, and then I had to polish it for about 2 years. I had to polish it a lot. It wasn't very good for quite a while. And in the fall of 2019, again, I was a ways away from that 1 year mark. I realized that with the loss of my job, I had to give up my law firm. I had to walk away. I had to give up my career. I realized that those losses were so profound and so great that I needed to find some way to bring myself back and give myself purpose and meaning to fill that void that the loss of my dream career had opened up. It was as if I had a huge hole in my heart and body. So I decided to form my company called JM Stebbins. I didn't have a clue what I was going to do, but I started somewhere. And I can tell you that as part of rebuilding my life, I resurrected an old dream. I had had a dream since I was younger to be a motivational speaker. And all of a sudden it clicked that, wait a minute, I just had this great career. And now I have this very unique, powerful story. This is what motivational speakers are made of. So I started my company and started giving speeches. I began writing a lot. I wrote the JM Stebbins blog. That's one of my favorite parts of my new life. And with my husband's prodding, we started a podcast together. I did not want to. And I didn't think I was going to be very good at it at all. And I wasn't at the beginning. But he convinced me to do it. And we have such a wonderful relationship together. It was really unique to carry that on in another way. So we began the Brain Fever podcast. I'm so proud to report that we are well over 4,000 downloads. I don't think we even have 20 episodes. We have been heard in 640 cities in about 37 countries. I'm just so proud of that. I have hosted brain walks in 2020 before the pandemic. We had an in-person brain walk, and my friends at the Encephalitis Society told me it was the largest gathering they know of in North American history. I was very proud of that. And in 2021 and 2022, we had virtual brain walks. And last year we had about 132 walkers in 7 states. So I believe the last 2 years we've had the largest brain walks in the world. And I have a lot of friends that wear hashtag Stebbins Strong shirts in red when we go red for wed, which is just so much fun. I volunteer for the Encephalitis Society and the AE Alliance in the US. I absolutely love both groups and the work they do. And I do love to give these speeches about resilience and the path to resilience with my 3 R's: survive, recover, rebuild. And I am so proud of Unwillable. It was published this year in May. It was published on May the 4th be with you. So I believe that that has to be good luck. And it is my dream that that book is someday going to save someone's life, just like Brain on Fire really helped save mine. And with that, I would like to do a little reading from the book. If you will allow, I promise it'll be short. As my recovery began, I had more questions than I ever had answers. I still don't have all the answers, but I have recovered, and I made it to the 1-year date of being autoimmune encephalitis, symptom and seizure free. For me, that 1-year mark gave me the strength and courage to say that I was in remission. To get there, I resurrected my double-edged sword of relentless drive and perseverance through pain. I decided that I would be a survivor in the biggest competition I ever entered. I set my mind to it. I willed myself to beat all odds and rise up. And I did it. As the old proverb goes, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one single step. To recover from autoimmune encephalitis, you must start out with that single step and attempt to take very small steps forward, day in and day out. You do it because you believe in yourself and you believe that you can persevere on your road to recovery. You dig deep and know that while the path ahead is less traveled, you have to start down it. The landscape is unknown and the terrain is bumpy, but the only alternative is to give up, and the consequence of that is a painful life and slow death. So you embark upon your journey, but you start small. And as you get going, you find out that your road takes you 1 step forward and 3 steps back. But you put your head down further and go even harder. It's hard. It's scary. It's ugly. It's the hardest thing you will ever have to do in life. You have to rise to the challenge. You can, and you will. What I'd like to leave you with today, friends, is a message that's been very powerful to me. When I was in the throes of my recovery, my friend Rachel was valiantly fighting cancer. And before she bravely died, she said, "You are stronger than you think." I agree. No matter where you are right now in your journey with encephalitis, please know that I believe in you and I believe that you are stronger than you think. No matter what, just keep swimming, and I promise you there are always better days ahead. Thank you so much, everyone, for allowing me to be here, and God bless and best wishes to you on your journey.